everybody. Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today, I'm very happy to bring on my returning guest and friend, Adam Gell. Before we start, let me tell you a little bit about him. Adam Gell is a shamanic mentor and certified Akashic record reader who specializes in helping his clients to recognize traumas, setbacks, and obstacles. And through various healing modalities, he assists them to better understand a path to a more fulfilling and balanced life. Having overcome life-altering losses and physical traumas himself, he has traveled the path of learning to go inward, develop adaptability and resiliency so he could step up to serve others. Adam had the willingness to become a blended version of all his parts, including the masculine and the feminine, developing his intuition and his ability to heal and to become his gift in this world. Because all parts of a story are worthwhile and create the whole, Adam worked as a physical education teacher in Brooklyn, New York for over 30 years. He was also a Division I baseball player and an adjunct professor of health and nutrition. The production of his film, called Forgotten, brought a deep level of ancestral healing and understanding of how Adam relates to his present, past, and future. Forgotten played throughout the film festival circuit in 2018, garnishing great reviews and professional accolades. You can watch it on YouTube, and the link will be in the description below. Adam also hosts Conversations with Adam Gell and Inspiring Minds, where he interviews amazing healers and transformers throughout the world every week. He is a professional photographer, writer, and world traveler. Adam finds joy in his family, his work, and his mission to assist people on their journeys toward self-discovery and fulfillment. All of the links are below in the description box. Today, in episode 223, Adam teaches us to access our inner child with trust and faith. Thank you for subscribing. Please leave me a comment and do smash that like button. YouTube channel memberships are now available, so you can receive my perks and help to support my channel. So without further ado, I will bring on our guest today, Adam Gell. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you, Karen? Nice to be here. Nice to see you. And
Oh, and
interesting, having these conversations which circle or cycle around the same theme in some capacity, but there's always something that gets added that puts a twist on things that help us expand, I guess, our level of consciousness. And so I'm grateful that you asked me to be on your show, and I'm grateful to be here.
I'm very grateful for you, Adam. You've taught me a lot. You're a great inspirational figure, in social media. And, we can't get too much of that. So I'm just thrilled to bits that you're here today. I just want to quickly say hi to Denise. She says she's been waiting for this show. And thank you so much, Karen. And Crystal Clear is also with us saying hi to Karen and also to Adam. So I don't know where you want to start today, Adam, but I think that, in my opinion, accessing the inner child is extremely important for healing work. And it involves something that very few people know how to do, and that is to love the self. Because when we love ourselves, we take really good care of ourselves. And that would certainly include reaching into our inner child. What would you like to say about that?
Well, it's interesting. I've been doing different interviews, and the more I speak to different people, the more we all come to the same conclusion about the work of going inward, right? That inward rabbit hole of discovering our past, our ancestors, and connecting deeper than where we're at right now. And it's so important for us to be able to really be able to sit comfortably in the wounds that we've experienced and the traumas, and be able to assimilate our lives as an adult, and almost throw that rope or that baton to keep the continuum of the soul's journey alive. And I've mentioned this before. We cut off the difficult parts of ourselves that we ourselves can't see or look at or feel. I remember as a teenager just trying to override my pain by getting married, being in a relationship, skipping the process of learning how to assimilate my feelings or my wounds. Instead, I buried them and tried to override it, and thought that I could become an adult and leave the past behind. And when we leave the past behind, we're leaving a very important part, a treasure of ourselves back there. And it feels abandoned, and we become disconnected from ourselves. There's no longer this continuum, is a break. And it's like an island floating away from you. And the more it floats away, the more we lose the foundation of who we are, which causes us, as we go on this journey, to eventually retrieve it, which becomes difficult sometimes because we've learned to mask the connection with the external world, the material items, objects, physical attributes, perfectionism, everything that we can do to really keep ourselves away from that inner territory of who we are. So I think the child plays a vital role in our psychological, spiritual, and emotional health. It's the essence of who we are. It's where we return as we get older. So we go through the childhood, we go through teenage years where we want to then become an adult. We want to skip the past, and we go through our mid years of our lives, and we're either in relationships where we're told to be adults and not feel the child or act like a child, or with parents, obviously, but mostly as we mature with relationships, and so we become suppressed. And I guess now, as we reach a certain age, it's more acceptable to act like a child because it's not threatening for certain people to see the inner child reveal itself, because they themselves are not in touch with their inner child when it comes to relationships. Not always, but a big important part of that journey. So, yeah, see, you asked me about the inner child, and I just think it plays such an integral part. It's the emotional part that holds on to early memories, experiences, and beliefs, right? And so I want to try to bring that back. Remember it.
Yeah, it's really, really important. I was thinking about our upcoming conversation, which is now happening now, and I was thinking about there's certain they're biological, but they're also artificially constructed levels. And I'll just speak to womanhood because that's what I'm more familiar with. So we have, the child, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. That's really well recognized. But it wasn't until I became a crone that I realized the trick is to be the child, the maiden, the mother, and the crone all at the same time. So
Wow.
some people call that, your second childhood. And as you mentioned, as we get older, we seem to have more permission, to be in touch with our child self. And I totally agree with you. So, you hear, especially in pagan circles, a lot of talk about, the child, the maiden, the mother, the crone, but not too often is it spoken of as to exercise all of that, bring all those avenues of wisdom and knowledge and understanding, to one place. And the other thing I just want to quickly add is the older I get, the more amazing my relationship with children is. And children don't think I'm weird at all, as some adults might, but children get it right away. And it's just incredible.
Yeah. Well, as a teacher, I never abandoned the inner child, which made me more relatable and made me become more um, believable. I was more authentic because
Mhm.
as I've mentioned this before, where I each level of the child's own development brought me back to my own development. It brought me back to the place where I was during my life, and it was difficult to try to feel, but in feeling, it helped me override and grow from the experiences that I had with the children in front of me.
Mhm.
So when the kids were acting out or disrespectful, it brought me back to the place where I was looking at it through my eyes, how they were, as opposed to judging them as this adult who would then be dismissing the childhood aspects of myself. So it
Mhm.
brought me to a real place of understanding, and it helped me grow. I think, like you're mentioning, the the development of incorporating the three aspects: the child, the wife, and the crone. Um, for me, it's interesting to think of it as also as for a male. You know, we go through these hormonal shifts just like women do, I would say, and at a certain age, when certain hormones diminish, more of the wisdom and more of the feminine aspects of being able to sit and relax and give information and become the wise person, I think takes over and allows children to then listen to the stories and to the experiences and to see that and as an authentic aspect of one's own development. For example, myself. And another attribute that I was thinking about was also the Saturn return that happens, I guess, 28 to 29 years of our lives. And we're refaced with the same conflicts and things we went through when we were 29. I mean, at birth, 29, and then 58 or 59 or so. And in that age bracket, we're refacing exactly the same things we faced at 29, hopefully having a different spin and a different version, and having done the inner work to assist us to move forward to the next phases of our lives.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's super interesting. Another thing that I often reflect upon, well, once in a while, I suppose, I've got two furry cat babies that I love dearly, and I know you know what that's like because of you and your relationship with your little dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when we look at our pets, they don't have the same brainwashing and conditioning that we have. And so they remain puppies and kittens their whole life,
That's a good
even
point.
though they're growing up and they get older. But we live in this social construct that says we're supposed to put away, all that silliness, so-called silliness, and be serious and work hard
Hmm.
and act a certain way. And I've had trouble with that all my life, partly because, or maybe mainly because I'm on the autism spectrum. But I get around other people and they all sit very quietly with their knees together, sipping their tea, and there's a certain format for conversation that I don't get. I'm random as all hell. I'm just whatever comes into my mind that's interesting, I start talking about. And it's interesting that I'm perceived, um, well, let's just say I'm not taken seriously very often. And I'm not complaining. I wouldn't change the way I am for anything. But it just, I guess what I'm trying to say is I really appreciate people who step outside of that conditioning and can let themselves just be. And, all of us, we say silly things at times. We think different things are funny. And I think it's all good. But to shut all of that down, I think is the beginning of the dying process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And only by opening that back up are we truly, truly alive. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Adam? I know you talked about when you were a school teacher and being in touch with your inner child really helped you to relate to the students, which I think is fantastic. And I bet you were great to have as an instructor.
Thank you.
But in healing work, how do you help people, or how do you suggest that people get started in rediscovering their inner child? Is there a formula to it, or how do you approach it with people?
Well, in terms of shamanic work, doing a journey usually brings me to back to the trauma or the reoccurring theme that existed in a child's life or the client's life. And you can see the integration of the dissociation from the parent, the child from the parent, and or the mother or the father or whoever it may be. And it's a reoccurring energy that comes through, whether even when I do the Akashic record readings. When I first open up the Akashic records, instantly the initial energy of a person's soul's journey will reveal itself and then take you back in time. How far back it goes in time could be the childhood, it could be the teenager, and it could be the adult. But it would be I guess the major barrier that's blocking the energy towards that inner child, which then opens itself up. So through shamanic work, doing drumming for a person and me connecting to their energy, I could see the conflicts that take place, making them aware of it, having somebody else speak their truth with trust, as opposed to them dissociating or having defenses or defense mechanisms that they've established throughout their life, which kept that inner child suppressed and not reveal what happened or what trauma took place. But I guess in the company of myself or a healer who can access that energy, it becomes a pivotal point for someone to then be able to integrate it back in, to see it, because people dissociate. They have amnesia from certain experiences, and they can't put it together. But then it's almost like a hologram of points. And once that happens, then the picture is put back onto the energy, and then they could see it again. And no, but the inner child itself, that work itself is telling having the client also, once they're made aware of it by a vision or a download, to then try to make peace with it, to try to bring it into your life, like you would bring a doll into your room, and you would talk to it and play with it and give it its power that it didn't have, and listen to it and ask it a questions. What is it that I can do for you? What is it that's missing from your life? What was missing? And in some ways, as you mentioned before, your personal story about being standing away from things that you didn't choose to get involved in, or standing alone. I guess the inner child itself then finds its way to being to find its power again. It finds that it allows us to then connect to that child again, and gives us back the power we need. So in essence, the child is being helped by being validated, by being seen. And in the opposite, the inner child is now supporting the adult by saying it's okay to be a child, it's okay to connect to me. I am your foundation. I am where it all started, and where it can be dragged down again if it's not recognized. So I think a lot of people as adults have tantrums. They have breakdowns because the inner child is calling, but they're not listening. They're not incorporating. They're not becoming rebellious towards what they need to stand up for. They're not singing. They're not dancing. They're not listening to music. They're not doing the things they did as a child. They buried it and put it aside at the expense of parents saying, "Okay, now you're doing what I'm asking of you.
Yeah.
Now you're following the rules. This is what we want." I came from a house where I challenged the system, and by challenging the system, like many people who do in a family, you become ostracized, you become labeled, you become a threat to the loyalties and the bonds that take place between my sibling and family members. But what happens is that if you stay the course and you eventually find your power, people respect you in every aspect of your life, because once you face it at home, you're certainly going to face it in work amongst other people, because it's a reoccurring theme to say, again, go inward, find that child, bring it back, recognize it, talk to it, bring a photo of it next to you, where the trauma, that age where you felt the most stressed from it, something, and look at it. You'll feel that anxiety that may take place, but at least you're eventually getting used to it and bringing it back. Otherwise, we're polarized within ourselves.
I would agree with that. Adam, one of the strengths that was brought to me by my inner child was defiance. So I found that through the physical sensations and feelings around being defiant have really served me well, as far as setting internal and external boundaries. There's
Wow,
a
yeah.
tremendous power. Children, yeah, I don't know, most of you out there have had children, some of you haven't, but children, especially from the ages of 2 to 4, oh my God, they're so defiant. But it's such a powerful, powerful energy. And in a system that doesn't give a lot of power to children, it's what seems to be quite useful. So then going around in my life and coming back
Yep.
is my inner child gives me the gift of defiance. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I like that because I think when push comes to shove, I have that as well. I
Hmm.
definitely have that as well. I, I wouldn't say I pretend or I exist in interactions in order to not keep the peace, but to remain on the same level of communication on an earthly, 3D dimensional feeling. But of course, there are times where you go a little bit higher and you see things from a greater perspective. But then you have
Hmm.
to in the interaction with other people, you have to interact and come down to that three-dimensional energy itself. And you're faced with inevitably standing up for your belief system and having those boundaries in place. And it does require a sense of defiance where you're going to be alone, you're going to face isolation, but it's at the expense of then joining other people who don't resonate, or you lose your equilibrium. So I think defiance in children, it actually is teaching them to become independent, to become independent thinkers, to find their path. A lot of times, parents stunt that and try to have everybody join the herd and remain loyal, as opposed to teaching individuality. And so I think defiance is a means of a soul trying to find its way as an individual, as opposed to fitting in, so to speak. And so many times in school, we're taught to fit in, stay in a line, which is natural. We need order, but we also need independent thinking. We need individuality. We need children to be able to express their own feelings about things, or how they what they like, what they don't like. But in so many systems, we're caught up in grouping and putting so much emphasis um, on following the group, being part of it. We've experienced it, right, for the last 5 years, and it's a test now for us to see our defiance of maintaining solitude, and maintaining independence, and that's a very powerful energy that's necessary. And to see it in a child that's contoured in a way where they're not out of control is a beautiful thing. Because what's worse than having a child that just goes along with the crowd and gets lost in the shuffle of things and doesn't develop their own sense? I mean, certain children are born with that fire in them that they're going to be a
Hmm.
spark plug no matter what. And then there'll be children who will follow along other people, uh, and not be able to maybe commit themselves to their own individuality, which is probably it's written. I would say children will be who they'll be, and then
Hmm.
faced with the adversities that will shift them to become more than they are, or adults the same way. But yeah, I think it's a positive thing to be defined as long as you're not disrespectful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a balance. It takes, I don't know, our whole life, I think, to get that balance going properly. I wanted to take things out into a larger perspective and get your thoughts on this. It seems to me that trauma is something that we all endure. I don't know if they still do it, but when I was born, they used to hold babies up by their feet and smack their behinds to get them to cry. That's pretty barbaric. When you think about the birth process in the hospital, it's pretty barbaric.
Yeah,
And then it just seems to go on and on and on. When we're very young, 2 years old, one of the first words we start using is no. A lot of us got spanked every time we said no. In fact, when I was a child, spanking was something that it was thought if you didn't do it, you would ruin the child, spare the rod and spoil the child type thinking. But trauma just seems to go on and on and on. Sometimes it's even the first, depending on how sensitive the child is, even the first day of school can be extremely traumatizing for kids.
Yep.
And so it seems like our society has built traumatizing babies and children to sort of set them up for docility. I don't know if you see it that way or not. Please feel free always to disagree with me. But it seems to me that as adults, I think a lot of the problems we're having, and especially like, for instance, in the arena of addictions, and things like that is because we're all been traumatized, but we may not remember or we may not think of it as trauma. So, in your opinion, do you think that it's good for us all to do trauma work? Or what are your thoughts? Do you think the system is designed to traumatize us, to hold us back? I don't know. Just what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, I think the system's built on is built in a way where we're connected to, I guess, the matrix itself. We're connected into this. I'm going to use Elsa Dillon's word as the matrix, as the mother is influenced and drawn into fear. The influence
Mm-hmm.
over the child is nothing more than a continuum of what the mother's experiencing, and then that takes place. So I think our society is attempting to control, and by control, there are ways of doing that, as I just mentioned. But the sense of fear, of installing fear, and I mean programming through these iPhones and through everything else, social media, is a way of creating a docile child, a child that doesn't go out and play, but is fixated, as adults are, on this high of getting this rush, this dopamine rush of going to their
Mm-hmm.
phone and
Mm-hmm.
either creating videos or listening to something, and there's no opportunity for a child to sit in peace and be able to dream or to find the imagination or to develop an imagination. Everything is at the fingertips of a child, and it becomes almost, I guess, a sense of where when you have everything, you lose interest in things. I think in I'm not too sure if it's the Hebrew or Kabbalah. There's the thing known as the bread of shame, when we're given things without working for them, when we're just told to sit and to do nothing, and things will be given to us. We develop that sense of shame, and we develop that sense of, we lose the motivation to thrive. And so I think the society is doing that deliberately to keep us connected into that matrix, into that energy. And therefore they can play fear and, a rush, an energetic rush. All videos, you see children's videos are so fast. The music goes so fast. The scenes are so fast. There's no time to reflect. It's keeping up with what the society developed already, and they're continuing it. So um, there's no allowing for a child to develop their, which is connected again to their individuality. There's no allowing. It's a matter of moving things along, getting things going, and the child becomes docile because it's everything's too easy. It's made easy.
Mm-hmm.
Information is made easy. You have
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT, which is a wonderful tool, but for children now to be able to use information without actually researching it and reading a book or reading things, I think takes away from their own development, takes away from their personal growth. While things are easy, it doesn't necessarily mean it's better. And I think that being docile is having those things that I just mentioned contributes to the docility of an individual. Adults too, obviously. So children for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I struggle with screen time myself. I
Yeah.
don't mean to, like I'm very aware. So for instance, I will check my phone, well, probably more often than 4 times a day. But I check my phone, clear my messages just in case there's somebody, who is trying to get a hold of me or something. And then I put it away. I don't just put it away, I put it like 6 feet or more away from me because I'm really sensitive to the energy that the or the EMFs, that the phone constantly produces. So that's another
I
whole
know.
discussion.
Yeah.
But I know people who have children who will have such fits of rage if the phone or tablet's taken away from them, all they want to do is sit on that tablet. Video gaming, same thing.
Yep.
My grandchildren are just turning 6, and I bought them each a child's camera. I didn't realize there was a few simple video games on the camera. I thought they could have fun just taking pictures of things. You never know from a perspective of a 5-year-old.
Right, right,
You can
right.
get a real kick out of some of these pictures. So, but then when I went to visit them, and they found out, just because they're so smart, they found out that there were some very simple games on there, like the old school Super Mario Brothers type of
Yeah, yeah,
games.
yeah, yeah.
And you know what? They were instantly addicted. Instantly. They didn't want to do anything. They didn't want to. And these are kids that are raised without technology. They have TV, and they get to watch like Disney Princess and stuff that's pretty low key, but they don't have access to any of. They were instantly addicted. I literally had to take their cameras away and hide them, and told their mother, well, she doesn't want them playing video games either. But it's incredible. And so I think the problem isn't just the constant dopamine they're addicted to, but they don't learn how to self-soothe.
Yeah.
They don't learn how to generate their own dopamine through random acts of kindness, or being gentle with a pet. Like, there are so many ways, being outside and just smelling the flowers. All of these things give you dopamine,
Yes.
but they would miss all of that if they were tied into the screen. So I know that parents are challenged, and it's really hard to parent, and I'm not trying to make parents feel bad, but I just wanted to add to what you were saying. Even myself, I mean, I may not be on my phone all day, but then, I'm working in front of a computer screen. There's more screen time. I want to watch a little Netflix. There's more screen time. I want to do a little research on
Yeah, yeah.
YouTube. There's some more screen time. So I'm just saying, I'm really aware of it and I work at it. But I'm telling you, for me, it's easier to stay on a food diet than it is a dopamine diet.
Yeah, well, I think as adults we're prone to that. So how could we expect the children or have the skills to teach the children when we're lacking the self-control, and today with so many easy distractions for parents to occupy a child, they give them the computer, they give them the screen time, and they get embedded in it and they're lost. And the children barely go out of the house to play. I mean, depending upon where they are, and so it
Mhm,
becomes an addiction. And I guess it'll just be a continuum of their childhood, because the computer itself, we had toys as children, we had objects that we played with. But if the child is playing with a computer at an early age, it'll be just a continuum from childhood into teenage years into adulthood, and there really are no toys that they're playing with. So they're not actually, they're not able to distinguish maybe their childhood in the way that we may have done so. The different stages of developing, the playing at different sports or different games or whatever it may be, that became a physical and an experience. But the experience is not an external, it's in the computer itself. And so that becomes all, again, another artificial intelligence environment, another sense of fantasy rather than reality. And I think the stimulation is necessary now because the kids get bored so easy. The graphics, the change, the sounds, everything. It's
mhm,
I mean, we're evolving, so maybe children are definitely more aware. I mean, there are children with a higher level of consciousness, more indigo children, I think, children who have a higher connection to the universe. Um, and I think that's shifting, right, with the solar
mhm,
flares and assisting everything else. But as it comes to what we just discussed, I think that's just the way it's going to be. I don't think there's going to change. It's going to change. Hopefully, it does in some way. Maybe it will if people are able to get outside more and play and
mhm.
enjoy themselves in the street or in the fields or wherever they go, just to shift it up a bit.
Yep.
Everything's about safety and fear, but that at the expense of, again, individuality, at the expense of experiences, at the expense of having the skills to be able to survive in this world that doesn't require looking on your computer and getting an answer. It requires having an
Mhm.
emotional response to something that takes place with another person, an interaction. Like, how do you
Mhm.
handle an argument? How do you handle a conflict? How do you do that if you didn't experience that? Because children are, I mean, of course, it's natural. Children will have conflicts with other people in their lives, with friends or whatever it may be. But it's certainly not the extent of like when I grew up in Brooklyn and I grew up in the streets playing sports and then having a fight with somebody. And it taught me to survive. It taught me to stand up for myself. And it taught me how to have then compassion. It taught me different emotions.
Mhm.
It wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't a boxing match on a video game. It wasn't something else. It was a reality. And you recognize a certain hierarchy of where you are in your development, of what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And having those skills is golden because it helps you in life survive, and it helps you advance yourself, and teaches you to shift and grow from what you were to what you want to be. But if it's a continuum of the same thing, there really is no interaction. They're just interacting with a computer, not people.
Mhm.
People make fun of people on the computer. They have, like, there's things that take place, which is a negative attribute. So there is interaction, but even as adults, it's a social world. We're communicating by computer through the internet, which is an
Mhm.
amazing tool. If you use it in the right way,
Mhm.
amazing tool. And
Mhm.
so I think it's definitely, I wouldn't forego the past or the traumas at all. I wouldn't want to have. I wouldn't say that I want to endure them, but I think they're golden. When we have traumas, it's the biggest teaching tool for us to understand our lives and to be able to impart wisdom on the next generation and to know how to help or assist others. How would you know danger if you never experienced it? How would you know trauma if you
Mhm.
never experienced it? How could you help somebody if your intention is to not only help but also to grow?
Mhm.
We completely dismissive. We buried it in such far places, as I spoke about. But again, the only way through that is through that, and the only way around it is, and I've been telling is like going down and coming back out again, and creating that
Mhm.
loop, which takes us to the galactic energies, which takes us around and back into ourselves.
Yeah, it's a toroidal field for sure.
It's very interesting. I know your book, which I purchased, which I read, which is wonderful, and the
Thank you.
experience. And I know this is not on the subject, but a couple of weeks ago, I was walking through the fields as a little park over here, and I witnessed a woman with white hair and white eyebrows, very galactic. It was very interesting. I was just passing that on. So as I mentioned, going down that hole of that tunnel of information and coming across different areas. So I think the reason I brought that up is because I just think that once we go back to our inner child and we validated it, we brought it back, then we're more open towards these connections that then take place with the universe.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Because we're looking out, we're looking in, but we're not looking at a screen, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, no,
We're
I know what
looking
you mean.
inside ourselves and we're seeing the world around us as it really is. I think I was really lucky, Adam, because when I was a kid, until I got into my teens, nobody even had a TV. Well, some black and white TVs with rabbit ears, but
Yes.
my mother won a TV, a color TV at the church social, and we were the first family to have a color TV in our area. People used to drop in, our neighbors, because they wanted to see what the color TV looked like. But besides that, to be honest with you, unless we were in school, we were outside. We had to go out in the morning and we weren't allowed back in until mealtime. And we'd have a quick lunch and be back outside. And we really didn't stay in until supper time or even later than that. We didn't even have hardly any toys. And again, I think the major area where it helped me was with learning how to navigate my way socially, because all the other kids are out there too, and there's no supervision. And then what you also touched on is I think in the 80s, they really pumped a lot of fear that your children were going to get kidnapped if you let them go out to play. All of a sudden, children were all getting rides to school. Nobody was walking to school anymore. So systematically, it's like the social reality has been tampered with to the point where now everybody's within themselves and their homes, with their heads down looking at screens, and they're
Yep.
missing out on so much. And as you mentioned, the spiritual things, like there's a lot of ways that the universe communicates with me, or my higher self communicates with me, just by noticing the behavior of birds, or to see some people that I like what you mentioned about the woman with the white hair and the white eyebrows, right? It's like that is a feedback system that we would be completely missing out on if we spend, all our time in front of screens.
Yes.
So we've talked a lot about that. I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about uh, now, we've talked about some ways that people can access their inner child. They can do that by working with a professional like yourself. They can do that by going internally. They can go into their traumas and be brave and analyze things. There's self-reflection, sometimes called the hero's journey. There's all of that. But I want to talk about uh, anything else that you have to help people to understand ways that they can get in touch with the inner child. And I want to mention one thing that I did. I have done inner child work. It's almost like every 10 years or so, I need to do a little bit more inner child work. But one thing I did is I actually bought myself some toys that were children's toys. And I found that when, I know it sounds ridiculous, embarrassed to admit it, but when I'm sitting there playing with a toy that is meant for a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, it's like going back in myself to
Yeah.
that child.
Yes.
And then later on, and I would do it with dolls and things, and then later on I would do it with like Barbie dolls, because now I could access my inner child a little bit older than maybe before. I don't know. Do you have any I'm sure you
Yeah.
have some unconventional
It's interesting.
unconventional advice.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I wanted to also, I was going to touch upon exactly what you just said, is the fact that, you go back and we're so close when we dislike something or hate something, we're so close to loving it. There's a fine line, obviously, they say, between love and hate. And that fine line of the things, again, that we tuned out or we turned away from, there's always a positive experience into that past. There's maybe even more positive experiences, but that one experience can cause everything else to be buried underneath a rock, right? And so I think that, as you said, or you mentioned, I think it's important for us to make a list of things we did as a child, the songs we listened to, the hobbies we had, the things that we liked, and then try to incorporate them back. Even if it's an older song, maybe listening to the song. What did you collect as a child? It's, that gave you that sense of inspiration, that sense of joy, that put a smile on your face, that song that you can sing or listen to again. It's the same thing when you listen to a song from the past and you hear it and you start hearing the tune of it. It brings back positive memories. It brings back something, makes you feel good. I think the important thing for us to do is try to find the things that make us feel good, that give us a sense of release, of like a high energy. And that's usually the things from the childhood experiences. So whether it be what you collected, for a guy, if you collected baseball cards, I've been doing that myself. I've been listening to music, actually, that was part of my past, and I'm singing the songs, and I remember a memory from hearing that song, the food that
Mm-hmm.
you might have ate, or the experience that you had. Look back and don't allow that the one or two or even more experiences, because there's positive experiences that you experience that need to be dug out and to be looked back at. And I think once you do that, it brushes things aside. And so I would have people write a list of things that they did as a child that they enjoyed, that they can incorporate now in their lives and do it again. Obviously, some people may not be as flexible in terms of movement or doing certain things, but they can certainly retrieve the feeling that took place from the past in doing something that they did. Um, and I think that's important. Again, I think what I mentioned earlier is to try to visit the child as an adult, to pay a visit to the child where it is in a specific house where their trauma took place, looking in the window, communicating and asking if you can come in and spend a little time, and just comforting the inner child, holding it and giving it what it didn't receive. And that will help out a lot, I feel. And I said, putting pictures, I like putting pictures from traumatic times of my life. I put them next to the wall where I made me grow accustomed and brought me closer together to that part of my life that I didn't want to know or didn't want to deal with.
Mhm. It's wonderful
And
advice.
I think also, as you said, being able to be around children without having an aversion towards the parts of them that make you feel something about yourself, like to investigate that feeling, because a lot of times people say, "Oh, the kid's so annoying, so loud. They're getting on my nerves. Can't they be low? Whatever it may be." It's an interesting thing to think about, because as soon as you just draw a picture of yourself at the age of that child, you say, it's really not that child that's disturbing me. It's how I was treated as that child by my parents, and how I was looked at as annoying, or whatever it may be. And so
Mhm.
it's important for us to just have a sense of awareness on an everyday basis to see what things trigger us and what stimulates us to feel those parts of ourselves that we want to hide or bury. And I think if we're vigilant in doing that, then we grow, and then we grow more accustomed to that part of our lives, part of ourselves.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely fantastic advice. Interestingly, recently, I like to go for long walks, and lately I been loading up an old, well, actually, it's an old phone that I have that I'm not using as a phone anymore, using it as an MP3 player. And I downloaded some music playlists off of YouTube, and um, I'm really old, so I had to download 1950s and 1960s and 1970s, right? And I was amazed that I knew all the words to all the songs, and I would sing along, and it would take me back. But it wouldn't just take me back to anything painful. It would actually often take me back to something joyful, because I always really enjoyed music.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yes.
I found that really very, very helpful. And so I guess there are many, many ways that we can, do inner child work. The main thing is, I don't think there's a right way or wrong way. There's just doing it is, and making time for ourselves, caring enough about ourselves to make time to do that kind of work. I know it's really hard for some people who work full time. They got a family, they got a husband to look after, they got aged parents to look after. But really, I think we need to buy out that time and schedule that time. And you don't even have to tell anybody what you're doing during that time. That's your special time,
Yes.
for you. So I think that's really important. Now, we're getting close to the end, not quite. I wanted you to talk a little bit, tie in having faith and trust with your inner child. I think that's
Yeah.
something that I'd like to know more about.
Well, I think the issue of trust plays a major role in our own um, vulnerability. Our trust makes us have faith in things. But how do we develop faith in things when we weren't raised in environments, many people, where they can have a sense of trust in things, where there was a lack of order, where there was disarray, where adults themselves were still wounded inner children who never really heard about this term, ever faced this term. And okay, there are circumstances that naturally, maybe years ago, people didn't have the resources to learn about things. But I guess it takes a sense of compassion to be able to go on this journey, to be able to help oneself and then help others. But I think having faith, right, um, which is like an inner posture of an openness towards something you can't fully verify it, and you can only be directed towards some type of feeling about it. And I think when it comes to the inner child, I think again we have to work on the sense of trust, like where the trust was broken. And it might not have been exactly with our parents, it could be ancestors before that, and it could be prior to that, and it could be just something that was a continuum and that was passed down from one generation to the next. And so you really can't get to the specific source. You can get to the emotion or the incidents that took place that created this harmony of mistrust. But when we take mistrust into the outer world, everybody is our enemy, and even the inner child, because it's the one knocking on our door and we don't even understand it, we don't want to understand it. So I think having an openness and developing a sense of asking ourselves where what incident took place in our lives that caused a sense of mistrust, like where did it stem from? Because the foundation of faith is having trust, and it's not a concrete trust. It's a knowing that you feel within yourself. I guess it's an energy that's passed in an environment where there is a sense of love, compassion, and honoring yourself as a child. Being able to take that with yourself, to be open and to trust things. I, for example, came from a home where my father trusted nothing. Everybody was an enemy. Everybody was out to get something. He came from Europe after World War II, so maybe his experience had shaded his ability to, or his father taking incidents from World War II and being refugees and just surviving. So I think once we incorporate the inner child and we gain a connection to it, we show the child that it can trust us, that it can develop a sense of consistency and a sense of bringing awareness to the fact that I'm here again, as I mentioned earlier. I'm here. You can trust me. But we have to be open to be able to go to that place, to that child. We have to be the one that rescues it, that brings it back to where it needs to be. And I think that helps, again, circumvent the whole cycle of us developing trust in ourselves and in other people. Because, again, the inner child had to be the one that was wounded to lose that sense of faith, that knowing that things will be okay, even though they don't seem okay. There'll be this energy that will take place, that will come over, that will bring a sense of ease to a situation, and that confidence, right? Again, that you can't verify, but that you can just feel. And just like a religious faith, the person has faith in something, you put your energy towards that, and then it's a manifestation of thought into action or into support, calling upon help, angelic help, galactic help, whatever it may be. But as it relates to the inner child, I think we develop that inner child. We develop the faith in helping the inner child know that I will be your example of trust. I will be there. I will be consistent, and I will bring awareness to things that I pushed aside. I will put you back on the track and give you the baton to pass to me, and I'll pass it back to you, so to speak. So I think that's
Wonderful.
yeah.
Oh, I think that those are powerful, powerful words. One thing that I never learned to do until very recently was I used to worry about the future. And then I got to the point where I realized that I have my own back. I have my own back. So it doesn't matter what happens in politics or resources or relationship, like it doesn't matter. Whatever happens, I have my back and I am not going to let myself down. And it's so powerful, Adam. It's like an eraser. It just completely stopped all that worrying about the future. And each time I say it, I'm affirming and becoming stronger and stronger. That would also include taking good care of all parts of me, including the child within. Another thing I wanted to touch on is we talked about music, but when we're releasing trauma, we need body movement, it seems, to kinetically clear that. And so what I love is dancing. And one of the things I love about you is you're not shy at all, Adam. I've seen you do YouTube videos where you're dancing down the hallway to music. Sometimes you're singing. You don't care what other people think.
No.
It's what you want to do in the minute. And you're giving us permission to do that as well. So I just wanted to throw that out for people that are maybe making notes, body movement, but dance, especially to the music from when we were young. Children love to dance. Nobody
Yeah.
has to. they don't feel bad at all. So I think that that was another powerful tool. And you're such a good mentor. You're such a good example on the road forward, So if you have not gone to Adam Gell's social media socials, the links are below. Look him up. Follow him on Facebook, and you will find you'll be constantly being encouraged. You don't just dance and sing and do things. You also have quite a lot of clips of you doing guided meditations and drumming. Everything you put out into the world is so positive and so healing. And I just want the listeners and the viewers to take advantage of the amazing offerings that you have for all of us.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Yeah. So how about if you tell us a little bit what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely.
What you're up to, and do you have
Yeah, I'm in the
what do you got
process.
coming up?
Yeah, I'm in the process of writing a book, a memoir of my life. I did the documentary film, which was an inspiration for me to realize I could connect to my ancestors and use that as a stepping stone towards my life. And through that, I elaborated more on my memoir of my childhood, and how growing up, I'm in the process, how growing up in Brooklyn in the 1970s in a culturally diverse neighborhood, and how I somehow found my Russian grandmother, who came to, had a connection to the Soviet Union in a time when we were learning that that was our enemy. And so I'm pulling this all together in terms of how my love endured, and how I grew a connection to understand the struggles of everyday life, of what people experience, people who came after the war, and what they had to go through and what they had to endure. And my deep connection, how I learned to connect to my parents after having these traumas, how it circumvented me back to realizing that they were their own wounded children, looking to suppress me because I was the light that was blinding their darkness, that didn't want exposed. And so I came full circle. And so I'm writing this book. I'm bringing light to the fact that, again, the real theme is that stay the course of what you believe in. Be an individual. Don't follow the crowd. And inevitably things will shift if you're on the right path, being a compassionate, good human being. And so in my book, I'm tying all of bringing light to the dark and sticking through it and keep going up the tunnel until I break through the other side. And breaking through the other side is what I've accomplished in some ways with what I set out to do. So that book I'm working on, I'm working with an editor. I would think by next year it'll be out. And I'm doing that. I'm doing my Akashic record readings. And as you mentioned, thank you, was all the different social media types of things, the drumming and the inspirational information that I get downloads for and pass forward to a YouTube video. Yeah.
Wonderful. Do you want to just take a minute and tell people a little bit more about the documentary that you made called Forbidden? So everybody, the link is in the
Forgotten.
description. I'm sorry, Forgotten. I don't know
That's
why I
okay.
said that.
Yeah.
The link is below. Everybody, I highly recommend this documentary because it's so well done. And Adam takes you on his journey. You feel like you're right there with him throughout his journey. It's just so well done. And I think it would definitely, I think a lot of people would really benefit from watching it. Sorry,
Yeah,
forgotten.
no, that's okay.
Forgotten.
No, it's okay. It's well, the information was forbidden. So, and then I wound up finding it, and it became, it's a journey of my life as a 7-year-old going to my grandmother's house, growing up in what I considered a dysfunctional house, and she was my escape. And being that she was my escape, she was sharing her past life with me. I was like the bridge for her to be able to pass on her life to me. As a 7-year-old, I saw photos of a man in a military uniform who I didn't know who he was. I had a grandfather. She was married, but this was this man lurking in the background. And as I grew through my life, she would share tidbits of her life with him, where how he got, the bullets were flying left and right, how he got killed, and she didn't know where he was, and that was the end of it. And then from there, I got divorced, and my divorce was like the springboard for me to recognize the fact that my connection with my children was fading away, and I was trying to have a connection with them. But somehow the memory of my grandfather from 40 years prior to seeing that photo awoke his memory into me and said, he was a human being. My father doesn't even know his father's name. He doesn't even talk about him. He doesn't address it. If I ask him questions, when I did at 8 years old, he told me to leave him alone. And I said, wow, that could be me, or it could be anyone else who's forgotten. You have a wife and you have children, but then they don't remember you. And if you don't even have a photo, they won't even know who you are, what you look like. And so by me seeing that photo at 7, I took that photo and I wound up investigating, and I found his body in a mass grave in Russia. And I went there and was able to pay my respects on behalf of my grandmother, and all the tears and trauma she endured in her diaries, and the feeling she still had as she was writing Remarried. She was still writing entries in her diary about her love for this man in Brooklyn when she arrived after the war, some 10 years after, and even longer. So I was the next person in place to receive this information, to pass it on. And so I honored her, and by making this journey. And I also helped my father piece together his family, who his father was and where he came from, because he was grateful after I did this.
Yeah, it changed the whole family dynamics.
He broke down, and he opened himself up, and he was, he told me he said, I'm so proud of you that you did this. He goes, I don't know how I would have never been able to even think about it. But yeah, so I'm writing about the journey, and that was the story. That's the documentary itself.
Oh, incredible. Incredible. Well, I sure appreciate you, Adam. Thank you so much for being on the show. I want to thank the people that came to join us in the live chat, and all of those listening to an audio version or the replay on most media platforms. I wish you the very best, Adam. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show and to have these conversations. I appreciate you so much. And I guess that is it. Oh, I know. Why don't you just mention where people can find you, just for those listening on audio?
So my website is adamgelluniversalhealing.com, where I offer different services. And my YouTube channel, again, is Conversations with Adam Gell, Inspiring Minds. And that's my YouTube podcast. So, yep.
Wonderful. And Facebook. Don't forget to
Facebook
check
as
them out
well.
on
Right?
Facebook.
Adam Gell. Yep. Thank you.
Adam Gell. Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on Sunday for the Aliens and Angels podcast. And just hope that everybody is taking good care of their inner child. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining me for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional: Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available in Amazon bookstores worldwide. Check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton, and also the Aliens and Angels podcast on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.